Hey, Larken Rose here, and in a lot of ways, reality is sort of its own enforcer, but sometimes it's more obvious than at other times. For example, if some genius says, I wonder what'll happen if I drop this anvil on my foot, and he drops it and he smashes his toe, like, okay, cause and effect, pretty obvious, you did that, you did something stupid, you're suffering the consequences. That sort of built-in reward and deterrent system in reality is pretty darn effective if it's immediate and obvious. For example, if people are breaking into, somebody's a criminal and breaking into people's houses, and then they get shot. Well, if they get shot and die, then they don't really learn anything. They just stop existing, but that also stops them from committing crime. If they get threatened or shot and not die, they may quickly learn, whoops, that's hazardous. I better not do that. Because they've figured out that's cause and effect. Now, whether they like it and whether something is moral or not is completely beside the point when it comes to just physical reality imposing consequences on people. The trouble is there are so many stupid ideas where the consequences aren't immediate enough for most people to even recognize that the bad thing happening is their own damn fault. So I'm going to give some examples. If you're a Trump supporter and you're complaining about Biden's inflation, it's your own damn fault, you jackass. You voted for the guy who started the massive socialist handouts that led to inevitable inflation. It was Trump who first was pushing, we need to hand out so much free money to people that they will be devoted to me forever and worship me, like the dictator in North Korea, who I adore so much. He pushed it. He complained the first time around that they weren't handing out enough free money to make up for having destroyed the economy. 100% socialist, 100% collectivist, 100% authoritarian, 0% pro-freedom. And how many Trumpites were then sticking the stickers on but Biden did this, look at these prices. Biden continued it. Yeah, he did it too. And to be fair, I should turn around and point to the leftists who are like, it's so hard to pay rent and afford food and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, you supported Biden, who's a collectivist who handed out free stuff just like Trump did, leading to the inevitable inflation that we're seeing now. But how could anyone have known? Literally everybody I know was like, well, this is going to lead to huge inflation. It can't not, because they actually know how currencies and money supplies work. Even just at a basic level, if you grasp even the most basic things, you realize, okay, that's going to cause this. You're paying people to sit on their butts, so productivity is going to plummet. You're throwing money into the system, so that's going to make prices go up. So production's down, the amount of currency in circulation is going up. Of course, there's going to be an inflation, and it's going to be huge, and it's going to be bad. Now, Trump was probably smart enough that he was throwing away free money when he knew full well that the inflation wouldn't hit until he wasn't there anymore, because there's a delayed reaction. But how many people cheering for it don't realize that you're the cause of it? This is your own damn fault. And that's true in one way or another of literally every damn statist. Everyone. They advocate things that then create the problems they then complain about. Almost everything. Literally almost everything. Why is there such high crime rates in all the places that we disarmed the victims? Because nasty people who like to rob people like to do it without getting shot. So they go places where they're not going to get shot because you made sure agents of the state disarmed all their victims first. Why are there all these shootings in schools? Like in the gun-free school zone areas that you made sure wouldn't have any normal people who were armed to stop them? And so, I mean, that's one example of a gazillion. But it's true of the political right and left equally, including the whole, scary terrorists that hate the U.S. Gee, why might they hate the U.S.? Is it something I did? Sitting over here on the other side of the world, like writing some music and building some houses? Do they hate me for that? No, they don't. Huh. Why might they be? Maybe it's the continual murdering of people on the other side of the world by the U.S. military, decade after decade after decade. Maybe that made some people kind of mad. To the point that they want to lash back violently and in a very nasty way, in a way that may kill innocents, which is just as wrong. Why would anybody do that? Because the military you cheer for. We support the troops. You support the people creating enemies around the world. Because the U.S. is not, the U.S. troops and military, they're not protecting us from anything. They are creating enemies, and they're serving giant corporations by stealing resources here and there and everywhere else. Like, that's... it's finally getting to the point that some people can say that out loud, and a lot of normal people have to go, yeah, I guess that's kind of true. I mean, there's still some people, no, they're protecting our freedom. No, they're fucking not. Who do you think was a threat to our freedom? You think some guy in a cave in Afghanistan was going to come stop me from building a house, or was going to come try to take a cut of my paycheck or something for some job? No, let's see. Every single time that's ever happened to me, it was Americans that you twits voted for, left and right. Whether it's local twits voting for property taxes, or federal twits voting for income taxes and all sorts of, or state twits voting for income tax and a zillion excises and everything under the sun, you put them there. You made that happen. And to watch so many people so unaware of the consequences of their own actions, that they don't get that you made this happen. And you didn't just make it happen to you, you made it happen to me. But it's almost weirder that they don't notice that they caused the problems that happened to them. And, you know, if we had 1 million parallel universes we could try, all you communists who think it's such a great idea and we need equality of outcome and everybody share everything and imagine no possessions. All right, everybody who thinks that, go over there, imagine no possessions for a while, and when you see the horrendous outcome, then shut the fuck up with your crappy ideas. Stop victimizing the rest of the world with your ignorance and crappy ideas. But it isn't just true of the political left. Political right does its warmongering and we support the police. Why? Because they keep us safe. Do they? No. Do they spend most of their time fishing for excuses to pull people over and rob them because the tint on their window is 3% darker than is allowed in that state? Or because they didn't have the right sticker on the back of their license plate? Yeah, that's what they actually do. You can look at movies and TV shows and pretend that's what cops do. It isn't. You can open your eyes in the real world and realize, oh, I've never seen them actually stop a bad guy and protect the innocent, but every one of us has seen them over and over and over and over and over again. Somebody pulled over by the side of the highway who, I don't know, maybe they were speeding, maybe they didn't have the right sticker, maybe whatever. Every once in a while, somebody's driving like enough of a lunatic that would actually be justified to like stop them from endangering everybody. But that's about 0% of what the cops go after. They're just road pirates. And we all see that with our eyes. Like, they do it right in front of us. It's not a secret. And yet a lot of people still imagine, I support the police because I support protecting the innocent. There is no connection between the two. If you supported protecting the innocent, you would oppose the police. You would support normal people being armed and knowing how to communicate with each other and defend each other and things like that. But the thugs of the state is not the way to protect the innocent. And that's something conservatives still haven't figured out. So there's another fine example. And I can bash myself on this because that was the flavor of statism I used to fall for like a bazillion years ago. Is I support the sheriff and the cops and the state police and the blah, blah, blah because they protect us. By doing what? By throwing people in cages for possessing the wrong plant. That's pretty big percentage of what they do when they're not robbing people when they're not doing literally highway robbery. They're like going after people for victimless crimes. Because it's a lot less dangerous to go after people who are committing crimes where they're not actually dangerous and they're not harming or threatening anybody. They're just like growing a plant that the politicians say they're not allowed to. Then you can be all big and bad and tough and send in your SWAT team and shoot their dog and kill the wrong person and kill people at the wrong address and be all kinds of Nazi jackass and pretend you're protecting and serving. And instead of conservatives being able to say, you're the aggressor, they have to lump it all together into, we support law enforcement. If you support law enforcement, you do not support freedom. I don't know how obvious a statement could possibly be. Law enforcement is anti-freedom. They are not freedom enforcement. They are not justice enforcement. They are there to use violence to make you obey whatever arbitrary crap the politicians decide to call law. Now, once in a blue moon, they may go after actual aggressors, and 99% of the time, they are the aggressors. They are the ones committing armed robbery. They just have flashing lights and pull you over by the side of the road and go, do you know why I pulled you over? Yeah, because it's your job to rob me to give my money to politicians who didn't do a goddamn thing because you're just a thug and a thief and a parasite. That's what they actually are. So all the conservatives are like, we support law enforcement, or we support the troops. Good, you support murderers for the worst people in the world. That's outstanding. They're fighting for our freedoms. No, they fucking aren't. And what level of delusion do you have to have in your head to still pretend that the military has anything to do with protecting our freedom? From what? They're just thugs for the politicians and giant corporations. Luckily, more and more people are able to see that. But to hit back on the point, all the conservatives who complain about the drug problems, you made that happen, you dumbasses. Your war on drugs made narcotics 1,000 times more dangerous. Because you thought, well, it's a bad thing, it should be outlawed. Because you don't know how to think. Because you think that authoritarian violence is the solution to every social ill you can imagine. Well, we don't like people doing that. We don't like prostitution. We don't think that's good. I don't think that's good either. I don't think it's psychologically or physically healthy for people. And it's still a billionth as bad as using violence to try to stop people from voluntarily interacting. I have the right to say, I don't really think that's necessarily that good for you, like psychologically or whatever. But I don't kick down their door with a gun and point it in their face and pretending I'm doing it for their benefit. All the drug laws, all the vice laws, where it's people voluntarily exchanging anything, and then government introduces violence into the equation, and then you complain about, look how violent these drug cartels are. Like the Mexican drug cartels exist 100% entirely because of the American war on drugs, because of the DEA and the feds creating a black market with a huge profit. And you can, I've talked about this a million times, so I won't go into it that much. You can see it with alcohol prohibition. Compare before and after. You were allowed to drink alcohol. Some people got drunk, some people were stupid, just like they are now. Government said, no more alcohol for consumption. Immediately, the mafia took it over. Still happened. It was way more dangerous. It was way more violent. It was way more expensive. There was corruption. There was violence. There was crime all over the place connected to the crime that they manufactured. They made it a crime to have something instead of actually hurting somebody else. And the moment they repealed it, because they couldn't keep up with it, what happened? All of the organized crime and the political corruption related to it just vanished. They know full well that would happen if they ended the drug war. The Mexican drug cartels would collapse. Literally, Walmart would put them out of business. 7-Eleven would put them out of business. By the way, you can see that with marijuana in a whole bunch of states, including Arizona, where now you can just buy it places. Wow, there's no more shootouts over like people selling marijuana. There's no more kicking down your door and dragging you away and putting you in a cage for years because you tried to sell a plant to another like willing grown-up. Gee, why did the violence go away when the laws went away? Because the laws are violence. And so many conservatives don't get, you're making these problems. in the exact same way that the liberals don't get. You're making these problems. The poverty levels, the amounts of homelessness, that is 100% the result of government intrusion into people trading. I could personally build a whole bunch of tiny little homes, build a row of them together where each person has a little lock on their door so they have somewhere other than a freaking sidewalk to sleep in. But I'm not allowed to because government would shut it down. A massive amount of food is thrown away in this country every day, and leftists love to blame it on corporate greed. They're not allowed to give it away as soon as that expiration date is passed. I've talked about this before. I knew some people long ago. I'm sure they're not there anymore. 7-Eleven's not even there anymore, so I'm not going to get them in trouble. I went there so often, they would give me sandwiches right after the expiration date because they're like, we have to throw them away, and they're perfectly good. They don't just suddenly explode the day after the expiration date. So they would just give me a few because I would still go in and I'd buy stuff anyway. The amount of food that gets thrown away because government says you're not even allowed to give it to people. That's the only reason there's hunger anywhere in this country. The amount of regulations that and hoops you have to jump through to have a place that you're allowed to live in. Do you have an occupancy permit for that? No. Well, then he's going to have to live on the sidewalk instead of this cool little building that I could build myself for like $200. And I'm sure I could raise people just donating to build these things. And people have done that with the tiny houses. I mean, there's a pretty complex and pretty advanced compared to the little things I would build as the starter level of at least you're not literally on the street. But I'm not allowed to. And people who have done that have been shut down by the cops. You're not allowed to actually solve the homeless problem. We need them dependent on us. I mean, we need to make sure that people only... And the left doesn't get that you are making the problem. You pretend to give a shit about homelessness. You're the ones who support government tentacles and everything that get in the way of people actually helping. You are the cause of hunger in this country. You are the cause of homelessness in this country. You're not being compassionate when you support government violence being used to stop people. Like the minimum wage is a fine example. We care so much that you're not allowed to pay somebody less than $1 bajillion an hour because we're so compassionate. Well, guess what? You just compassionately, by way of the violence of government, got a huge number of people fired because they had little jobs at some shop or something, and the shop owner's like, I can't afford to pay you that much. I don't make that much. You know, if you want to come in and sweep floors and learn how to do stuff and I'll pay you a couple bucks an hour, like that's better than, and you can sleep in the back room. Like, and there's been like TV shows and movies where that's the theme. That's all illegal. You're not allowed to do that. Yeah, he can sleep out there in the park and hope he doesn't get killed or die of pneumonia in the middle of winter. But it's illegal for people to voluntarily trade if it's not above the level that the leftists decide should be the minimum. And it's illegal to say, well, you can sleep in the back room. This place is zoned for business, so we don't have an occupancy permit. So it's illegal for me to say, you know, we'll set up a cot and a sleeping bag in the back room. You know, if right now you're sleeping on the street, at least come inside. And, you know, we're climate controlled in here. It's actually warm in here. You'll be okay. Nope, that's illegal. We can't have that because government said you're not allowed to. The political left did that. The political left is responsible for homelessness and hunger, and they don't frickin' realize it. And most of them don't frickin' care. And it's the same thing with the conservatives. They are the cause, by way of their political beliefs and advocating government violence, they are the cause of most of society's ills. And they don't want to know. And the reason I say that is when I pointed out and I explained why the war on drugs is heinously evil. And it's not because I'm in favor of people being addicts. I never drank. I never smoked anything. I'm boring as hell. I've never done anything that counts as narcotics or even alcohol or cigarettes. So no, it isn't because I just want to go get drugged out of my mind. I think a lot of people are harmed by addictive substances, especially alcohol, which is worse than almost anything else. And yet, I recognize that I don't have the right, by way of myself or by way of government, to violently tell people what habits I think they should have. And the conservatives who do think they have that right, first of all, are anti-freedom. Second of all, are creating the problem they then complain about. And it's sad to watch, and it's almost entirely because of the remoteness of the consequence from the cause. So that most people will cheer for this garbage, like the enthusiastic young people cheering for socialism, and too oblivious to like open a freaking history book. See how this turns out literally every single time it's ever tried. Well, no, they just didn't do it right. Okay, shut up. Go over there, try it yourself. And when you're on the brink of starvation and realize how stupid you were, then come back and figure out why mutual trade and ownership and having mediums of exchange is really important and allows for a level of comfort that is 1 billion times anything that your collectivist BS could ever create. But it's so sad to watch the political left and right causing these problems, and then half the time they literally blame it on freedom. Like the left supports all these government regulations of everything under the sun, and then when there's hunger and homelessness, it's hard to get a job, everything costs way too much, and they blame it on corporate greed because they don't understand anything about economics. And they don't need to, because the consequences, they don't see the connection. So they keep cheering for what stabs them in the back, and everybody else, but it stabs them in the back too. And they don't recognize it. All those liberals out there complaining about the high cost of things. You did that. I mean, Trump and his supporters did that too, but you totally did that. You supported the thing that was inevitably going to lead to exactly where we are now. That was you. And you can whine about, it must be because somebody's greedy or somebody has something that I'm entitled to. No, it's because you were stupid and fell for a lie. And then you helped make these problems happen. So it's a little bit frustrating when the people who actually recognize the cause and effect, and the people who understand economics and understand human nature and realize why, yeah, the welfare state doesn't actually help people. It destroys people's souls. But we have to make sure there's a safety net. Yeah, but that isn't what it is. It's a safety bog that people get stuck in until they're helpless and hopeless and their souls are destroyed. Also, you can pretend to feel good about how generous you are. So, that's just kind of the nature of reality. Sorry, if you were hoping for my great solution. There kind of isn't one, other than people understanding things, which they don't even want to understand it. They want to be led around by their feels. They want to cheer for whatever political garbage they think is a good idea. The closest thing I have to good news is when people figure out that authority is a lie and that government power is automatically illegitimate and inherently bogus, then they can stop creating the problems because there won't be a government through which their bad ideas can be forced on the rest of the world. And that is why my entire focus is trying to get people to give up their statism and stop thinking it's okay to force your crappy, ignorant ideas on the rest of the world by way of political parasites. Because that's not okay. I don't care if you're conservative, liberal, progressive, moderate, communist, fascist, I don't care what you call yourself. It's not okay to vote for a master for other people. It's not, and it's the cause of the vast majority of society's ills, and that's you. So, my question for you, that I will end with, is do you actually give a crap about justice? Do you actually give a crap about people suffering, poor and homeless? Do you actually give enough of a crap that you dare to back up and check to make sure you're not the cause of it? Or is your only focus and your only real care feeling like you're one of the good guys? You don't really give a shit if you're advocating things that are destroying people's lives, getting people killed, having people suffer horribly, destroying their entire view of themselves and their families and society. As long as you can tell yourself that you care and you're the compassionate one. So, yeah, this is, you could take this as an insult or a challenge. Do you dare to back up and check and make sure that what you're advocating isn't the cause of the problems you're whining about? Because if you're a conservative, it is. If you're a liberal, it is. If you're a voter, it is. You're the problem. The question is, do you dare to back up enough and check to actually stop being the problem, or do you care more about the existential comfort of hanging on to whatever statist BS you believe right now? You care more about that than you do about little children being blown up on the other side of the world, or people starving to death around the world, or living literally on the streets hungry. Which do you actually care about more? Do you care enough about other people to actually check whether you are inadvertently assisting with human suffering?